finally get here and be as well attended as it is. Thanks to everybody for your time invested in this. Brother Ted Burleson shouldn't be any stranger to any of us, especially here at the Church of Dole Springs. He's preached the gospel meeting for us, I guess, twice at least, 3 times. So he's always done a really good job, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of information about him. I'll let him introduce himself as far as his qualifications and everything, but just look forward to hearing what Brother Ted says. So, Ted, you got the floor.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Double Springs congregation for having a mental health day. I think it's a wonderful thing because so few congregations will talk about mental health or allow it to be talked about. It's kind of like the separation of church and state. They feel like that mental health is a totally different topic than church worship, and I totally disagree. I think it is very, very similar, and I think they coexist. Lonnie Jones has more knowledge in his little finger than I have in my whole body, but I think that we all have mental health issues. I think they're just at different levels. So that's just my take on it. And, I do want to start out by recommending some good resources. The best resource I've ever found on this topic is published by Lambert Book House in Florence, and it's called Heart Tree for Empty Nesters. And I don't know how to say Sherry's last name. It's Kuhn, I guess, Kughn. She's from Anniston, Alabama. This is especially, I don't own this. I checked it out of the library, so I can't give it away or sell it. But I'll be glad to pass it around. She does a wonderful job, and it's for mothers. But I've learned so much reading it. For example, let me just read one excerpt from page 78. The night before my son Jeremy and daughter-in-law Jennifer married, Jennifer's mother, Patty Manning, admitted to slipping into Jennifer's bedroom to watch her sleep just one more time. Does that sound familiar to anyone? I highly recommend this book. This little book is by Gina Stevens, and I don't know Gina Stevens, but it's 30 devotionals for moms of college freshmen. Some of you may have, we've had an empty nest for 20 years. Our granddaughter is about to, it won't be long till she'll be going to college, so, but, we live 2 hours from her anyway, but her parents are going to be struggling with that. But these are daily devotionals for 30 days for moms of college freshmen, because I don't know about you, but for those of you who have adult children, when my last adult child left home, I grieved. I went through weeks of grieving. In fact, I'm ashamed to tell this, but I would cry at night when I was going to sleep, and my wife would chide me and say, "It's going to be all right." I was teaching at Lipscomb University at the time, marriage in the home, and I think they called it marriage in the family. I'm not sure. Same subject. But I called Freed Hardeman. I said, "Do y'all need anyone to teach marriage in the home over there?" Because he was going to Freed Hardeman. They said, "We actually do." So I commuted 90 miles a day one way for 4 years while he was there. And he started hiding from me. I didn't see him when he was there. And I was like, I'm coming down here 3 days a week to teach so I could see him, and he hides from me. But anyway, I went through a period of grief, I'll be honest with you. And so, There's another one, and I'm sorry, all these seem to be directed toward moms. I'll tell you about one more that might include us dads. But this one is From Mom to Me Again. And it's excellent, and I like it because she talks about stages. I'm a developmental psychology believer. I believe we go through stages in life. In fact, I wish a congregation would let me deliver a series on passages, of different ages of stages of life, but I've not found one yet that would allow that. But I believe there are stages of life that we go through, and I personally believe Dr. Gail Sheehay, in 1976, she wrote a book called Passages, and she believes we go through a passage on about every 7 years. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think we go through passages in our lives, and this is a whole different topic, but I think sometimes people get stuck. Do you know 40-year-olds that are stuck at 15? Anybody know any of those? Anybody want to admit to being one of those? No, I'm kidding. But this is a very good book, and what she does is that she goes through stages. And this is also a very good book for those who are not married and live alone, but have an empty nest. And then this final book that I wanted to recommend, you may think it's strange that I start out by recommending books. Hope for a Parent's Heart as Kids Leave the Nest and Learn to Fly. I like this because she starts out by talking about a parent's prayer at graduation. Graduation is a major change because you realize, hey, they're getting ready to fly from the nest. I was talking to someone last week, and we had senior appreciation night. We have 6 high school seniors, 4 from Hamilton and 2 from Haleyville. And last Sunday night we had a senior appreciation. I was talking to one of the parents about the empty nest. He said, it's not going to be too bad. They're going to be going to Bevel, which is in the same county, I guess, or just right down the road. So that'll help me for 2 years. And so they're delaying the empty nest, but they know it's coming. This is a very good book. The author of this, and I'm going to pass these around, and I have put a Post-it note on the back of how much it costs, just so you'll know how much it costs. You can get all of them on Amazon. I have extra copies of all of them that belong to me. The ones that belong to the library I don't have. And so if it's a Post-it note on the back, I'm not a book salesman. I'm not like my best friend, Ricky Collum over at Hackleburg. I told Ricky, I said, Ricky, you could sell flip-flops to Eskimos. And I couldn't sell anything. I'm not a salesperson, but I have extra copies of these. If you want one of these after they go around, you can get them. But please, especially if you want to, look at this one, if you want to examine it. This is by a sister in Christ, and to me that means a lot. So if you don't mind, I'll just start those around. I'll start 2 on this side and 2 on this side, just if that's okay. Thank you. All right. Does everyone have one of those forms? And have you, if you will, while we're talking, if you haven't already, be filling it out and try to come up with a number. There are instructions on there how to tally it, and then I'll give you a tally sheet in just a moment. I'll try to write it on the board of what those numbers will indicate.
Anyone need a pen?
I'm sorry, I should have brought extra pens. I didn't think of it. All right, I would like to start with Scripture. And the first one I want to talk about is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Because there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to plant and a time to uproot. So what would the time, when they're babies, that's the time to plant. But a time to uproot. what would that describe? The empty nest. Either they go to the military, they go to college, they marry, they move away. For some reason, to me, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 and 2 is so effective. There's another passage I want to refer to, and that's also in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 10. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. Now I want to tell you something. I kind of think the old days were better. And Ecclesiastes warns me, don't say that. You know, when I was a junior in high school, my daddy bought me a new car, a 1974 Nova. And man, I love it. I wish I had it now. If fully restored, it'd be worth a lot of money. But when I look back on it, man, that was a wonderful car. But you know, it didn't have air conditioning. And not only that, it was a standard shift. And my wife, later, when I married her, and that's the only car we had, she didn't know how to drive a standard shift. And we lived in Jackson, Tennessee, and so I thought, where am I going to teach her? So we went out on the interstate. That's a terrible place to teach. But, you know, everywhere else you had to stop. And, you know, once we got started, she drove for miles. She said, I think I can do this, until it came time to stop. And we had to find one of those places where the trucks run off, you know, when their brakes fail. But, sorry. All right. There is something called the family life cycle. And let's talk about the family life cycle. If you have a copy of the PowerPoint, this will be PowerPoint number 3. Notice at the 12 o'clock position, leaving home. Leaving home. Now, notice for some people that the next step will be marriage. Now, that's not as common as it once was. Out of curiosity, those of you who are married, how old were you when you got married? Or those of you who are widowed, how old were you when you got married? I was 19, and I tell teenagers that today, and they're like, oh, you got married at 19? Well, my grandmother, man, got married when she was 13. I mean, the life expectancy at that time was 40. I'm not kidding. If you didn't get married early, you weren't going to live to see your children grow. So, anybody know what the average age of a woman is when she marries for the first time today? 28. 28 years old. Average age of a man when he gets married for the first time is 30. Oldest in American history. But we're living longer than we ever have in American history. So, for not everyone, and by the way, I have some real good news. The divorce rate is the lowest it's been since 1974. But you know why that's good? You know why that's happened? Cohabitation. Fewer people are getting married now than ever before because they're cohabiting. They're living together. Now, the Constitution in the state of Alabama is a little different. I lived in Tennessee for 28 years. And in Tennessee, if you live together for 7 years, you're what? Common law marriage. How long is it in the state of Alabama? 1 night. You register as Mr. and Mrs. That's a legal contract. You're married. You buy a car together. You rent an apartment together. So 3 years ago, the state of Alabama changed marriage laws. And now you don't have to have a preacher. You don't have to have a judge. To get married, all you have to have is a notary. You sign it in front of a notary and take it to the courthouse, pay $80, and you're married. And the reason, well, we won't go into the reason for that. All right, the next step then might be skip marriage but have families with young children. You know, when my children were young, I thought we were busy. We were busy. And I thought, I remember praying one time. We'd been to Disney World, and we were on the way back, and we were going to stop and spend the night because we lived in Tennessee. We were going to stop and spend the night in Birmingham. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't like Birmingham. And so when we were buzzing through Birmingham, I looked, and the boys were asleep in the back seat, and my wife was asleep, and I thought, I'll make an executive decision. We're going to buzz right through. The sleeping bears in the car woke up at Interstate I-65, exit 22 in Tennessee. At exit 24, I said a prayer to the Lord. Lord, if you'll let me get them home, I will never take them again. Anywhere. Because I made the poor executive decision. And I thought those were the worst years of my life. But I'm 64 years old, and I want to tell you something. I look back, those were the happiest years of my life. I just didn't know it at the time. Families with adolescents. I heard some good advice the other day. Said if you have a teen, put them in a crate, nail the top, don't put some air holes in it, don't let them out until they're grown. But you can't do that. Teens present a whole new blessing, whole new opportunity. Now, then notice the next one. It's about at 8 o'clock on the clock there, launching children. You know, when I'm older than a lot of you, but when we were growing up, when did you think somebody was grown? Graduated from high school or turned 18. There's some guys that we worship with at Hamilton who left home at 14 and started work. According to experts now, what age do people feel grown? 29. 29. So the parents are saying, hey, isn't it about time for you to? And they're saying, no. And then what about those who come back home? You know, they leave home, but then they come back home. And the rules have changed. All right, and then notice families in later life. And that's about it at the 10 o'clock on that map. And that's where we're at. Families in later life. So the empty nest represents that stage of life cycle when the grown children have left home to live. I'm going to put this word, I should have put this in quotation marks, independently. Because often, even though they're supposed to be independent, they're still dependent financially. Lots of times on the family. And more than a third of couples' lives can be spent in the empty nest. So think about that. Now, some have a loss of identity after their children leave home. Across the years, I've had a lot of people, especially mothers, who said, I don't know what I'm here for anymore. For all these years, I was here to watch after my children, to take care of my children. Now they're grown and nobody needs me. And there's often a grieving time that goes with that situation. I want to tell you, whether you're married or single, widowed, never married, you've got to have a purpose. And what helps me the most is knowing that God has a purpose for our lives. And not having a purpose makes it so much more difficult. But being driven makes it hard to retire. We've had a purpose, and it makes it really hard hard to retire. My good friend, Brother Jeff Jenkins, just conducted a gospel meeting in Hamilton, and his sweet wife Laura passed away. And Jeff sold his house, and he lives in an apartment in Flower Mound, Texas. And he said to me, we went out to lunch, and he gave me permission to share this. He said, you know, I spend 4 nights a month at home. The rest of the time, anywhere that'll let me come and speak, I travel. So how's he handling his grief? How's he handling his empty nest? He's coping with it by being gone from home. That's his therapy. However, the majority of parents find out that the empty nest brings a lot of satisfaction. It's like starting all over. When I was, maybe there's too much personal stuff here, and I apologize. That's just the way I teach and talk. But when my boys were young, there was an older man, a deacon in the church, named Brother James Putman. He was my best friend. He was old enough to be my daddy, but he was my best friend. And one day he just said to me on the Lord's Day, he said, hey, you want to go riding around with me tomorrow? I'm like, yeah. Where are we going? Let's ride around. I remember we were sitting at a red light in Winchester, Tennessee. And he said, I want to talk to you about something. I said, okay. He said, you and your wife are putting all of your emphasis on your children. And they're about to be grown and gone, and y'all are going to forget how to love each other. And I want you to start spending more time with your wife and more attention, giving her more attention, because right now, all your attention is going to your children. About 6 years ago, I preached his funeral. He was 95. But that's the best advice he ever gave me. Because he's exactly right. There are 3 years most likely for divorce. The second, why would the second be a year? Failure to adjust. 7th, the year most likely for divorce is the 7th year. Why? You ever heard of the 7-year itch? The honeymoon is over, and also by that time, if there are family members, one of the most stressful things that can happen in a family happens. The oldest child starts school. That ought not to be stressful, but families tell us that's one of the most stressful times. And so now the peers are influencing the child, not just the family. And in the 20th year. Why the 20th year? Empty nest, the honeymoon is over, and men, especially, let me back up. 68% of the men in the United States will be unfaithful to their wives. 15% of the women will be unfaithful to their husbands. Makes me wonder what old floozy is out there having an affair with all these men. No, because women make better relationship. Men are natural competitors. Women are natural relationship builders. So what happens when a man hits a midlife crisis? He starts wondering, do I still have it? And it can come in the form of a little red sports car, and it can come in the form of a little red-headed woman. And so I'm not running down all men, obviously. But if you're going to trust either a man or a woman, choose the woman. Because she's going to be more reliable and more of a relationship person in general than the man. And some of you have felt the brunt of a midlife crisis. and are now alone, and I'm sorry. Couples can benefit in the empty nest from an enjoyment of time together, increased quality of and quantity of interpersonal communication, increased intimacy. All that is related to increased marital satisfaction. And my doctoral dissertation was on improving marital satisfaction. 57 couples agreed to work with me for a period of 2 years, trying to help them improve their marriage. And 56 of them improved, and 2 of them ended up divorcing 3 years after their doctoral research. One of the best ways to improve marital satisfaction is empty nest, because it's like starting all over again. Now we're on the back of the handout sheet, so let's talk about a new normal. Couples have to navigate new roles. I don't know, some of you may still have children at home, and I want to give you some advice. Avoid calling each other mommy and daddy to the children. You need to have a relationship where the men do not call the mother mama, or don't adopt the name that the children call you. There needs to be that separation there. There needs to be that identity that the children recognize. I hope that my boys knew that if push came to shove, I was always going to back up their mother. I would never stand with her against them. Partners have to redefine their relationships, because, and I know some of you lost your partners very young, and you've been alone since. But in most situations, it means redefining your relationships. Let me give you an illustration. And again, I apologize for using a personal reference. My oldest son loves Major League Baseball. My youngest son liked amusement parks. So, for family vacations, where do you think we went? We went to Cincinnati, Atlanta, and St. Louis. Why do you think we go to those 3 places? Yeah. Major League Baseball and an amusement park. We haven't been to Major League Baseball since the youngest one graduated, and we hadn't been to an amusement park since they closed down Opryland, which was the dumbest idea in history. They're trying to sell Opry Mills. Oh, if you left Opryland, we'd be riding the Grizzly River Rampage. But the central day-to-day focus is no longer on the children, but you've got to find something you like to do together. I'm not like Brother Vance. I'm not a deer hunter. I hunt bargains and buffets. But I don't like to do some of the things my wife does, but, like go to Kirkland's. Well, that place stinks. I'll have to sit out in the car. And now my youngest son works for Kirkland's. He works in the warehouse doing computer support, but I asked him if it still stunk, and he said, yeah. Still smells like Kirkland's. But you know what? I go because that's where she wants to go. And if we're going to go to Major League ballparks and theme parks for the kids, I need to do things for her. Now let's look at 3 levels of attachment. We're on the second slide on the back page. Secure. That's high levels of closeness and low levels of anxiety. That's a secure relationship. And in just a few moments, when we tally these results and look at the results, we'll kind of see a little bit more where we are on this type of attachment. And then the second is anxious. high levels of anxiety and moderate levels of closeness and dependence. I went to a 50th wedding anniversary when I was doing my doctoral dissertation because I was interviewing people about their marriages. And I went to one, I remember, her name was Virginia and his name was Clarence, but everybody called him Curly. He didn't have any hair, I don't know why. But I asked Virginia, I said, what's the secret of your success? I had my notebook out ready to write. And I said, you must really love Curly. She said, honey, love doesn't have anything to do with it. I just put up with him for 50 years. So they were an anxious type. He did his thing, she did her thing. They didn't get each other's way. They became roommates. And then avoid it. Avoid it. Low levels of closeness. They're not close to anybody. They're very dependent on themselves. And then a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness. Now let's talk about parenting adult children. You know, when they were little, you could send them to the room. In most countries today, you can spank them. Some countries it's illegal, like Sweden, it's illegal to spank a child. On the United Nations, top 5 goals is to eliminate spanking. I wish my daddy had known that. So due to the transformation of the labor market, it takes longer for young people to achieve economic independence in the past. And so a lot of times when they graduate from college, or if they are in the military, or if they come back home. It's a total different parenting paradigm when they come back, because you can't scold them without getting rebuked. They're living in your home, but they're pretty much calling the shots. And that's a whole new paradigm. Let's avoid becoming helicopter parents. And let's talk about being a helicopter parent. A helicopter parent feels obligated to ensure their adult children's academic and social success. Yesterday, I don't know what state she lives in, because I help some people via Zoom and the internet. But I had a text from a woman whose adult children are having marital problems. I want to know if I would talk to them over the internet. And I said, sure. You know, it's best for them to contact me, because if mama contacts me, it doesn't show that they've invested anything. You know, if they take the initiative to call and to make an appointment or set the appointment up, that's different than mama setting it up. And so she made an appointment. I signed them up for Prepare and Rich, which is the #1 premarital and marriage instrument in the world. It's available in 21 languages and 7 countries, and over 1 million marriage and family therapists, professional counselors, and clergy, preachers use those. They haven't responded. So what's mama trying to do? She's trying to work it out, but the couple is not interested. Helicopter parents can be overprotective. And helicopter parents generally have a poor life satisfaction than people of a similar age. Why? Give me some feedback. Why would helicopter parents have a lower life satisfaction than other parents?
Higher level of stress.
Yeah, higher level of stress. Why?
Because they're stressing things.
Yeah, you can't fix it. You can't control it. And that's stressful. Some of y'all know Henry Bonner. Henry worked for the telephone company for 40 years. Earlier this week, they lost their son. He was 52 years old, had a heart attack, and died. I went to see Henry. The first thing he said is, I've always been the fixer. And I can't fix this. What's it feel like when you can't fix it? Feel like a failure. Or what if your grown children leave the faith? And you know that Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, when he is old shall not depart from it, is not a promise. Anything in Proverbs is a general principle. It is generally true. But I've seen elders resign because their 40-year-old son or daughter made a decision and they felt responsible. Look, I'm very blessed to have two sons. They're totally unlike. They're totally different. Just to give you an example, one voted for John McCain, the other one supported the Obama campaign. So, you know, I had to set a rule. We can't talk about religion or politics at home, okay? You can't discuss that. They're just different in daylight and dark. I can't control what they do. I can't control where they worship. I can't control where they work. I want to. By the way, did you know that in 67% of the population of the world, the parents choose the marriage partner for their children? Arranged marriage, 67%. They have the highest success rate than any of the nations on earth. Because parents can choose partners. Now, it may have something to do if you divorce, you get something chopped off or something. I don't know, but you know, for some reason, arranged marriages work. And I think parents might do a better job picking out partners than sometimes the children do. Returning to the nest, young adults often move back into the parents' home due to economic insecurity. Sometimes they go through a divorce. Sometimes they lose their job. Sometimes they become physically or mentally incapable of taking care of themselves. And that brings about a decline in the parent's life. I'm trying to help a person right now. He's special needs, and his mom and dad are concerned about what's going to happen to him when they're gone. They're older, and he's never going to be able to live independently. It's a great stressor on them. What's going to happen to him after we're gone? I'm so thankful for places like Rainbow Omega and other situations that will help people once their parents are gone and they're incapable. But parents of special needs children, that brings about a whole new category. Who's going to take care of them? And then something we need to talk about is caring for grandchildren. Caring for grandchildren helps the cognitive function of the aging parent. It helps our mind. You know, this is oversimplification. Dr. Snodgrass, you can laugh at this if you'd like. But I like to study the brain. Not that I have one, but I like to study it. And the synapses in our brain are like spark plugs in a car. The older we get, the more carbon that builds up and the less they fire off. That's the reason if you ask me a question, I don't know the answer right now, but I'll think of it tonight at 10:30 when I'm trying to go to sleep. The synapses are not working like they used to. The spark plugs are not firing like they used to. But when you start having grandchildren in your home and they live with you, it actually helps your spark plugs fire. It helps the synapses. For example, I have, by the way, we have a 6-week-old new grandbaby, Lillian Kate. But then we have 4 other grandchildren, and you're not supposed to have favorites, but I like hanging out with a 5-year-old, Haven. And she likes for Grandpa to sit down and watch television with her. And I have learned so much. I did not know about Paw Patrol. Where has Paw Patrol been all of my life? And then what's that little Pinkalicious? Y'all heard of Pinkalicious? Pinkalicious. Pinkalicious is awful. I can't believe they let that be on television. We have DVDs of Pinkalicious. And all these little things like, where's Bugs Bunny when you need him? Tom and Jerry, she's never heard of Tom and Jerry. My 12-year-old, he's never seen Happy Days. And so we only get 3 channels, and Happy Days is on one of them. Must be 24/7, I don't know. And Andy Griffith's on it. And so we were going to Lowe's the other day. We bought a cabin next door to them, and I hope I live long enough to restore it. But we were on the way to Lowe's the other day, and he said, my 12-year-old grandson said, Grandpa, what's your favorite television program? I said, I like Monk. I like Psych. I like The Mentalist. He said, I've never heard of any of that. I thought, well, I wonder why. None of them have been on television in 20 years. I said, what are your favorite? Now notice, he's only seen 3 episodes of Andy Griffith and 4 episodes of Happy Days. He said, I like Andy Griffith and Happy Days. Those are my favorite. And I said, well, that's okay. We rode in silence for a few more miles. He said, I guess I enjoyed seeing Opie grow up. But being around children, regardless of their age, grandchildren, helps your cognitive skills, helps your learning ability.
Won't Wordle do the same thing though?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, but.
I like a mixture, I don't mean just Wordle.
Yeah, I don't think I'm smart enough to do Wordle. It's like Jeopardy. Any of you watch Jeopardy? I don't. I watch Wheel of Fortune, but I don't watch Jeopardy. I'm not smart enough to watch. I have 7 degrees, but I'm not smart enough to watch Jeopardy. How do those people know those things? I think they give them some study questions to study before they get there. I can't do Jeopardy. All right, let's look at challenges for the nest, and then we'll do a little tallying and talk about it and see if anybody has any comments, because I don't know how many's in the room. Probably 29, but preachers count probably 200. Then we'll see, you have experiences and stories. Everybody has a story, and everybody's experience. I can learn from my 5-year-old, especially if I get a new cell phone. She knows how to operate it better than I do. But let's look at that challenges to the nest. The breakup of adult children's partners can bring on depression, especially for mothers. So your son or your daughter, they're married, they go through a divorce. It's really easy to turn that inward. Where do we go wrong? What do we not teach them? It must be a failure on our part. No, it's not. No. But it does cause a lot of stress. It causes a lot of stress in your life. Depression, the best definition of depression for me is anger turned inward. I'm angry, and eventually I turn it inward. I internalize it, and it leads me through a deep valley of depression. So it's better to handle the anger, even if you have to get ugly about it. It's better to handle the anger than it is to internalize it, because that internalized anger becomes depression. Disappointment about how our children turned out can affect older parents' mental health. I wish I had $1 for every older parent that I've heard say it wasn't supposed to be like this. They wasn't supposed to do this. We taught them better than this. I don't know why they did this. And then we can feel like failures based on our children's outcomes, how they turned out. Oh, that's very, very common. All right, let's talk for just a moment. Let's see if I can go over there with this cord. Let's talk about those little questionnaires. Let's talk about the singles first. Those of you, is it beige? The ones that's single, is that beige? All right, let's talk about that. Have you tallied up the numbers? I'm not going to ask you to reveal your numbers. But I just want to give you a little scale on this. If you scored between 21 and 56, you're dissatisfied. You're dissatisfied. If you scored between 57 and 91, welcome to the world. That's just neutral. That's just average. That's where we all are. If you scored between 92 and 126, you're a very blessed person because you're very satisfied. Now let's talk about those with the marriage satisfaction questionnaire for older persons. I guess that's the gray sheet. If you scored between 24 and 64, you're dissatisfied. There's some things in your life that you're really dissatisfied. You might want to talk with someone about that. If you scored between 65 and 103, you're just neutral. You're just fine. If you are very blessed, you scored 104 to 144. And if anybody wants a copy of those scales, I've got them up here, and you're welcome to pick those up, or extra copies if you want to give them out to people that you might know. You know, he said when we were through, just go to lunch. Y'all could just go to lunch early, but let's just see if anybody has any questions, comments, stories that you want. I'm through with my part. Let's see who has comments, questions, or statements about the empty nest. I'm touchy right now on retirement. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just not, because I'm being retired at the end of next year. It was not my plan, but it hurts too much to talk about it right now. I'm not going to quit preaching, and I have an agreement with the university where I teach that I have a lifetime contract. And so I'll still have something to do, but I love preaching. I love it. So I'm not touching on retirement right now, and that's my fault, but please forgive me for not doing that. All right, who has some comments or questions or observations or stories? Yes, Brother Don.
Do you have any practical advice for newly empty nest families?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I do. Travel. If you can have time, travel is the best antidote to the empty nest. We can't stay gone all the time, but creating a new normal, because you know what we did? We bought a feel-good car. Took us 5 years to pay for it, but had leather. It was nice, but that was our feel-good car. But I would suggest travel. That's the best thing. Now, if you're having marital, not that you are, but if you're having marital problems, travel is the worst thing on you, because I remember one couple, they said, we're having marriage problems, so we're going to drive from here to California. And I said, your marriage will not survive it. Do not do that. But I seriously believe that travel is a great antidote to the empty nest. Anyone else have a suggestion for Brother Don's question? What to do with the new empty nest?
Not embrace it. I have not missed going to the gym, not one day. We used to be at the gym till 10 o'clock every night, and it was nice.
You know, I have, after I got through the initial grieving process, I've loved the empty nest. I won't go into all the reasons, but one of them is I didn't have to worry about how I was dressed, what time breakfast was. As long as the two of us agreed. I'll give you a bad example. This is bad because I'm a diabetic. But the other night, we hadn't had supper, and we were been working out in the yard. We were tired, and my wife said, what do you want for supper? I said, a banana split. She said, really? I want a hot fudge cake. Now, we would never have done that they'd had a well-balanced meal, which they would not have ate. And so we went over to the Cardinal in Winfield and fulfilled our wishes. My blood sugar was out of the world the next morning. But, you know, when the empty nest, you do what you want to do. That's a blessing of it. By the way, if you're from Winfield, I apologize for saying this. The first thought when I heard a tornado had hit downtown Winfield is, I hope it didn't take away the Cardinal. That was awful. I started to drive over there just to see. Comments?
How do you deal with the disparity of grief? So I'm in here looking forward to the empty nest. My wife's in there still trying to figure out how to be a better parent. And our daughter's 19, about to go to pre-hard.
Yeah. Well, we are blessed now that with cell phones and access with text that we didn't have years ago. So for the one who is still grieving, I would say communication is the key. Now, that will be better for your wife than it will for your daughter. I taught at Freed-Hardeman for 4 years, marriage in the home, and I remember we had 47 in one class and 45 in the other, and I remember one day, beginning of the semester, this young woman named Hannah, she was a freshman, she had just started school, and she said, Brother Burleson, I've got a question. I said, okay. She said, how do I get my mama to stop calling me 3 times a day? Said she calls me and gets me up. She calls me at lunch to make sure I've ate well, and she calls me before I go to bed. I said, Hannah, it'll get better in 3 weeks. She said, how do you know? I said, I've been there. She's not calling. She's calling to make sure you're all right, but she needs to hear your voice. You're still her baby. You know that book, I'll love you always, you'll always be my baby? Don't ever read that on Mother's Day. I made a mistake of doing that one time. I thought I was going to get fired. If the mothers had been elders, I would have got fired. But, boy, cell phones and text, communication is the key. And reinvesting that time. You have younger children at home? Just have one. Well, one woman got mad at me for suggesting this because she said, so you're thinking that a garden and flower garden is going to replace my daughter? No, but she's got to reinvest her attention. She's got to reinvest it as a volunteer, reinvest it into schooling, invest it into something that she can do because she's been a caregiver. The other thing is just act like a baby. She'll have to take care of you. But diversity, where one is grieving and one is happy as a lark, that is an issue. Anyone else?
Now, once we get there, it may be completely opposite. She may adjust well, and I may be the one
That's a very real possibility. They are hiring, by the way. You could get a job there for 4 years. that was
don't think that hasn't crossed my mind.
that was a bad idea. Well, thank y'all very, very much for this time. You've been a wonderful group, and I hope that something has been said and that will help. And this was not the session I'm dreading today. The one on suicide is the one I'm really dreading, because that's such a difficult situation. But we'll do that later today. Thank y'all so much.
Go